Hello my little raptors and happy 2026. It is the season to make a reindeer. But not just any reindeer. Today we're making Reindeer Yoshi. So let's get into it. After forgetting I could poll my subscribers, I instead polled the neighborhood children on what they wanted me to make this Christmas. Either Reindeer Yoshi or Robot Santa from Futurama. And it was a landslide. Reindeer Yoshi. Which of course sent me straight to Google Futurama's release date and then swiftly into the shower to weep for 15 minutes in the fetal position.
How do you do, fellow kids?
So let's towel off our aging millennial tears and build Japan's answer to the platypus. An apple-eating dinosaur, chameleon, turtle, reindeer. And business as usual here, we start by giving our turducken a stylish steel frame. I'm using steel over aluminium as Yoshi's head will undoubtedly be oversized and I need a stronger metal to hold that ego. And if Jurassic Park and the subsequent 32 years have taught me anything, it's that dinosaurs were essentially 6-foot turkeys, so I can look upon this tinfoil body with confidence that we are right on track. I'll wrap the body with some finer wire and slather the trunk with a thick layer of clay adhesive before laying down the epidermis, which I rolled out on my pasta machine. At this stage I'm simply laying down the general shape and blending all the pieces together, and the details can come later. And oddly enough, we do have the silhouette of a delicious looking roast chicken. I'll conduct a quick scale check and add the supporting wire for the arms. And in the past I've used individual wires for each arm, but I find this trench and wrap approach mitigates any risk of the arms wriggling out or cracking. And spoiler alert, I drop Yoshi several times during this build, leaving him as cracked and fragile as my self-respect. With the arm trench filled in, I'll bend them into a more realistic pose before bending down the excess neck wire, which will be the armature for the lower jaw. And that is what we call a happy accident, that I will swiftly forget by the time I get around to making the T-Rex from Dino Riders. With the bottom jaw structure in place, I'll add the top jaw reinforcement. I can beef up the legs a wee bit and look at that amazing oversized noggin of his. I'm going to make the head from a solid block of clay because I got extra clay in my stocking this year, and we'll be attempting a oversized figure 8 approach to really lean into that more realistic than the game, but still objectively silly style. With a series of rollers and scrapers and candlestick makers, I can gradually shape the head until it begins to resemble what I have in my mind's eye. And speaking of eyes, I very much took the winging it approach to the eye placement for Yoshi and tried a couple before settling on building up the eye ridge and positioning them to look like a crocodile. And to make said eyes, I'll go back to my old faithful cabochons as I'm going for a larger cartoony look. For those of you not in the know, cabochon is a domed glass bead that does most of the heavy lifting when it comes to a nice shiny eyeball. You simply layer up the back with the colours that you want and that's it. Job's a good one. Channeling my inner Joffrey Baratheon, I'll mount Yoshi's head on a couple of spikes and tidy up the connection points by filling them in with clay. As Yoshi is a celebrity in its own right, I can add some cheek filler before adding in the Sui Dai-esque eyes and the ever-important eyelids. I'll secretly add Yoshi's third nictitating eyelid, which dinosaurs probably had, but it will be so small and detailed, not your common eyes nor my 4K camera will pick it up. After a quick smoothing of the eyelids, I'll quickly make a rock. But not any old rock. We want a polite rock.
You shut your mouth, fatty. The rock will come out there and slap the herpes off your lips.
Like all my favorite rocks, this rock will have an aluminium core that I can wrap in clay and smash with a piece of asphalt that long-time viewers of the channel will know I stole from an active roadworks site on account of being unable to find any real rocks in the wild. True story. We can send that off to the oven and add the first part of Yoshi's tongue that I've based on a chameleon for what I hope are obvious reasons. And then we follow it up with some gums. Juicy, juicy gums. I can then add some pre-baked teeth to the soft gums before adding on some toes. And the toes start as 3 sausages rammed tastefully onto the foot nub and then built up with some extra clay for metatarsals. I can poke in the requisite claw holes which can receive said claws before adding the opposable thumbs, which explains how dinosaurs can clearly open doors. Happy enough with the feet, I can add the mouth webbing, which I can only assume made dinosaurs better swimmers, and with that textured I can add the lower lip line and blend this into the rest of the face. And this really is quite disturbing because it reminds me of that one time that I went to a pig farm and I realised that my sausages have eyes just like this. I can complete the other side of the head before adding some girthy muscles to the neck required from an evolutionary standpoint to hold up such a massive head. I'll add some skin wrinkles, or scrinkles, where I deem appropriate before making Yoshi's second leg hand so that I may transfer this crime against nature from a cork block to a clay rock. This leg hand, or foot, as it's known by paleontologists and other smart people like me, will receive the same toe and claw treatment as the other. And while I was making this, my little brother from another mother, Mikey, established in 2015, made me this exceptional little reindeer sea turtle. So a big old shout out to my boy Mikey on this one, and a happy new year to you, buddy. And now back to the video. And after adding the rough details, I can then, with a scraping tool, scrape out a couple of arches to define the musculature of the upper leg, like a good old Jay Cutler quad stomp. Bit of extra thickness gets added and then blended in. This of course needs to be complete on both sides, and then we can add the ever important, life-threatening tumor.
It's not a tumor.
I mean, perfectly harmless, in no way malignant, red nose. The pre-baked sphere can be pressed into a shallow divot before I gouge out several back divots for the game-accurate 3 dorsal spike fin thingies. They each in turn receive a cuticle? I think? And then we can make some random dinosaur skin with negative rollers. Now I'm sure that if you've happened across my channel, then you have for sure seen rollers before. But if by chance you haven't, a negative roller once baked leaves the texture of what you applied but inverted, and therefore a concave dot with a ball stylus will leave a convex little dome on our object piece. And here are several that I have at my disposal. I didn't need the paint roller one, but I saw Adam make one and thought it was super cute, and I had to have one. I'll demo the variations here, as reptiles tend to have many varied scales and tiles, and if you just do the one, it'll look as flat as an overconfident hedgehog on a freeway. When handling the model at this point, I do recommend wearing a nitrile glove, as your fingerprints are unwanted here, and if the gloves do leave an impression, at least it'll be fine skin like dimples. And while I do this, do let me know, who is your go-to driver in Mario Kart? Mine was always the little Koopa Trooper on the SNES, and I love Donkey Kong on the N64. Never a fan of Rainbow Road though, always loved the beach. To get deep into the recesses where the stamps can't reach, I like to use my finger, and where the clay is concerned, I like to use a fine ball stylus for a little something extra. Now, what I maybe should have done first, but will work now all the same, is add random striations and cross striations to the skin because texture is my passion. I use cling film to cover the clay because sea turtles be damned.
You need to leave!
Just kidding. I love the turtles. Even Taka. And finally, to give the skin some extra zing, I'll cover the entire upper portion of the skin in clay adhesive applied as little dots on a variety of ball styluses. I can then demonstrate my innate hunter-gatherer skills and use a screwdriver to give Yoshi something to rest against by means of an additional sanding block. Satisfied with current product, Yoshi gets his first full body bake, and after being given ample time to cool off, we can Shutter Island this prize 10-pointer and add the deer horns, soon to be antlers. The head branches get some finer twigs glued into place, and along with some of my dearly departed fingertips, I'll lay down a layer of bone-coloured clay. Now this was an effort and frustration, the like I have not experienced since making 6 hands for Stitch. Go check out that video if you haven't already, it was pretty fun. But not now, like when you're done here, go watch that one and then all the other ones. But that said, after some Christmas courage, we got there with a lot of prodding, pinching, and a poking with an old dry brush for that slight porous bone effect. I guess if you squint and look really hard, you can kinda see it. Right, antlers, done. Love Actually, done. And next, to the rim of the turtle shell, which is a simple sausage, and I've actually used souffle scopy in this instance, and I can segment that out evenly and pinch the edges just to give it a little bit of character, and then I can roll a silicone shaper along the edges for some reason, and then I'll drape it over Yoshi's back. Then we're off to the oven for another quick bake where absolutely nothing will go wrong. Right? Right? So it would seem that Yoshi took a dive harder than a footballer trying to maintain the illusion that they're real athletes. And subsequently, we have broken antlers, a detached nose, a dramatic propensity for diving, and a broken ankle, which means he'll almost certainly die in the wild, either by starvation or being picked off by the larger predators. Rest now, sweet prince. The Rainbow Road calls you home. But wait, I'm a clay doctor. Boom! Too easy. Double trigger fingers. Pew pew. And with that kerfuffle out of the way, we can move on to making the shell, which is of course red, meaning that no matter where you go, Yoshi will find you. I'll size the shell and then impress in a hexagon to the center before hitting that subscribe button.
Up against the vehicle.
And after tessellating out the pattern, I can carefully remove from the bench and add the saddle to the back before arming our Japanese pop culture chimera. I was most disappointed when I realized that Yoshi had 4 fingers, because that's one less than a non-fun hand, and one more than a fun hand, hence leaving Yoshi as mid. Like Gal Gadot's acting.
I need you to give me the stone.
With the fingers rolled into shape, I'll add the claw holes followed by the dino knuckles that get blended back into the hand to add the appearance of metacarpals. And after a good old smoothing, I'll add the bougie fingernails, a little bit of detail to the palms before attaching the hands to the wrist. I'll give the hand a quick texturing before bulking up the arms with human anatomy for reasons? And after a quick blending into the body, it's prime time, baby. Now, in an effort to stop spending money on this YouTube venture, I tried to sponge on the primer, but given all the nooks and crannies, I had to relent and return to my $42 bottle of spray paint, and to protect the areas I don't want to paint, I use painter's tape, which is green because I'm Irish, and if there's a green version of anything, I'm going to buy it. Oh, and I also used masking fluid on the eyes. I also made a little wormy tongue off camera, but we can put that aside for now and give the rock a light blue wash. As Yoshi will not be going back in the oven, I filled his emotional support hole with a 2-part epoxy called Milliput, and that'll harden overnight. I'll smooth this into the surrounding area, texture it, and use the extra to clean up the crack in the shoulder caused by his dramatic timing. As Yoshi's underbelly is white, I painted it bone white with a thin wash as I wanted to be able to blend it in with the lime green of his top half while it was still a little wet. I ended up using 3 greens as the 2 that I bought for this project were so overtly oversaturated that I had to add a goblin green to try and tone them down a little bit. He still looked oversaturated, but in all honesty, I kind of like the cartoony look, so I just leaned into it. Next up was his mouth, and I got to experiment with some color theory on this one, and to make the terracotta I mixed some red, some white and yellow, and I got an orange. And then I gradually added earth terrain brown until I got this lovely terracotta. And while that dries, I can paint the nose and the back scales red and apply a very thin wash to the tongue. All the claws then get a coat of black, the shell gets tidied up from overpaint, and the teeth get painted a bone white. I also took this opportunity to make some variations of the terracotta just to give the webbing and the gums a little bit of variation, a little bit of depth, and it worked quite well. The rock then gets a quick dry brush and I can make a leather brown wash for Yoshi's underbelly. You may also have noticed that I gave him little shoes, of which all that remains are the collar, because initially I had wanted to make him busting out of his shoes, but his feet were far too big in the end and it would have looked silly. Well, sillier. The antlers received the same brown wash followed by a bone white dry brush, and then I made a bell. The bell is aptly bell-shaped. I can bake this and sand it accordingly. His bell needs a collar, which I'll make out of red clay, add a wee buckle made out of wire, and poke in some belt holes with a toothpick. The bell gets painted gold, and I can wrap the collar around his neck and give it a quick 10-minute bake, as I don't want to burn the paint. For the base, I did a really cool edit here, which is somehow gone from my timeline, so we're firmly in the trust me bro territory, but for all intents and purposes we'll be making a snowy landscape today. Snowy by a resin lakeside is the plan, but by the end it simply looked like a primed, unfinished base. But I think we're too invested at this point to turn back. I'll then construct an acetate frame held together with hot glue and try not to burn myself. Molten glue. Oh, yeah, that's gonna leave a mark. Okay. As I was saying, I construct an acetate frame, prime the base with Mod Podge and white acrylic, leave this to dry overnight with a blue marker I attempt to colour in a bluey ice, but I didn't like this at all, so reverted back to a classic blue wash with a white dry brush. I used a straight up white acrylic here, just a big primer tube, because I tried the folk art paint and I don't know if it's just me, but that stuff's terrible. Just awful. To shore up the edges, I will use some UV resin, and then I'll make the lake with a 2-part clear resin. I'll mix equal parts of A and B in a mozzarella tub, tint said resin with 2 drops of ink, stir for 2 minutes exactly, Pour slowly and set aside in a used but clean litter tray overnight. And here are the results. It was a moderate success, I would say. The resin did leak out, but it must have been very slow because I still have a lake's edge. There was, however, some uncured resin on the base, so I opted to frame out the edges and filled in the gaps with hole filler. And speaking of hole filler, I bought the grey one because I honestly did not know that you could buy it in any other colour other than white. And that little whoopsie daisy put me back another day or so because you gotta wait 6 to 8 hours for that filler to cure, and then I gotta prime that, wait for that to dry, and then put down the flocking in the same way that we usually do. Apply a thin layer of PVA glue, put on the flocking, shake off what you don't need, and then seal it all with some woodland scenic cement. To add the texture to the water, I lay down a layer of gloss Mod Podge which will dry clear and it looks pretty good. And then Yoshi gets glued into place, his tongue gets locked in, and I can add a border to the water because I thought it looked unfinished. The mouthful region gets a final varnish, and we are off to the races on this one. A big ol' thank you for turning up for this one, and if you liked the video, don't forget to do all the things with all the buttons. You know the drill, unless this is your first time on the internet, of course, in which case, welcome to our planet. In any case, Happy New Year, hope you all enjoy and continue to enjoy the holidays, and until next time, go make a mess.